Okay, I'll mute everybody. Okay. Welcome, friends, to one more session of our Thane Management Forums. This is going to be the 25th meeting of this year. And we have Dr. Adil Malia to speak on the topic. Our Dr. Kelkar has returned from US after almost in a year. So I would like him to say some few words before we put an introduction. We give introduction of Dr. Malia from Mr. Murthy. So over to you, Dr. Kelkar.
Surely, Jagdish, thank you so much. And a big welcome, first of all, to Dr. Adil Malia, and for accepting, and big thank you also for accepting our invitation to speak to Thane Management Forum members. And we thank that because we have a common friend, Dr. Krishnamurthy Iyer. Today, unfortunately, he is not able to come because he has gone for his consultancy to Bangalore, I believe. So, but we have a great person today in you, Dr. Adil Malia, and we are really indebted to have you as a speaker for one of our the 25th webinar this year. And just for, I think the Dr. Sen Murthy is going to introduce formally. But as I said, I think we talked about it, and Dr. Adil Malia is one of the big personalities. Let me tell you, our members, that in the area of Thane Management Forum, I'm sure many of you must have heard and when you work in your own companies. But you know, getting heard and actually seeing and talking to him is a great. The two things are different, and so we have big opportunity today. Whatever questions you have when you work in seamlessly in the companies with the management and operating side, those are the areas I believe he is going to talk. I don't want to preempt anything, but I think again a big welcome, Dr. Adil Malia.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to have you for Thane Management Forum. And Murthy, can you please take over in your lucid language?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic program today lined up. Presentation by Dr. Adil Malia, and the topic is going to be quite exciting because he speaks about a new concept, really, whole system integrated plasticity. Just a few words that I would like to try and elucidate here would be that leadership is a point of view. And when it leverages all resources available under its belt, especially human, it becomes meaningful in terms of impact. Now, flipping the term esoteric, which means that which is understood by a select few, it would be interesting to find out how India can delve, continue to adapt, and execute upon the wisdom of its past, known to a select few, heard by the entire country, but missing upon execution. So from an India perspective, it will be interesting to find out how the critical parts of esoteric leadership can be maximized so that the vast multitude of human resources of our country can be leveraged in specific areas of engagement that show promise. Now, the philosophy of Make in India, for example, can be said to be derived from esoteric leadership in a sense, because it is all encompassing. At the same time, it is focusing sharply inwards. So similarly, if you had to look at innovation on the move, and I'm talking of that which we see in current times, then Recipe Book has an app that scans the contents of a refrigerator as soon as you open it and recommends recipes. So the question is, how do you make this limited philosophy grow towards endless opportunities? And a brief quote that I would like to, I just picked this up from HBR, and the title is The Big Idea, the Wise Leader. All social phenomena, including business, are context dependent, and analyzing them is meaningless unless you consider people's goals, values, and interests, along with the power relationship amongst them. Yet executors fail to do just that. So the questions are many. How do you make big small? How do you make small big? How do you make a Burj Khalifa in your mind so that you can stand out for the right reasons? For all these reasons and many more, really, we will have a fantastic presentation by Dr. Adil Malia, where he'll be speaking in depth on this subject. And a brief introduction on him would be that he is currently CEO of a business management consultancy firm, which is called The Firm. He has a degree in commerce, a bachelor's degree in law, a master's degree in human resource management from the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He's also attended the Coca-Cola Wharton School Advanced Management Program, and he has been bestowed a COSA honoris doctorate in philosophy. Dr. Adil has over 4 decades of corporate experience in India and overseas, working in large, reputed, professionally managed national and multinational companies, and the list is like a who's who. Godrej, GE, Marks and Spencer, Coca-Cola, SR. So he has wide experience in the fields of law, industrial relations, human resources, and organizational development. So just look at the span of activities that he has covered, both across senior management and board levels, where the vision statements come out. So he is involved right from that point onwards. He is now into business management consulting, as I said, and is a much sought after business coach to some of the well-recognized CEOs in business. And he believes in developing a full stack, and this is going to be interesting for you to hear. He believes in developing a full stack of all-round personality as key to success. An avid reader, he writes in several magazines and is well quoted for his radical and creative opinion. And amongst all this, as if this is not enough, he is also a well-recognized doodler, which is simple drawing that have concrete representational meaning. A social media enthusiast, and he plays the Mohan Veena. What more can I say? I offer the platform across to you, Dr. Adil. Jagdish Bhai, take it forward from here, please. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Adil, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me such a happy introduction. In a way, it has put a kind of a performance pressure on me, because now I have to live up to the great introduction you have given me. And I'll make a very serious attempt to do that, and I hope I succeed in doing it. All right. So let me give you a 2-minute kind of a perspective on what the whole concept is all about. So leadership, according to me, and we all talk about leadership in multiple ways, and we have all been exposed to knowledge, literature, experiences, discourses on leadership. And we have all also concluded it very effectively in our minds that leadership is not a game of position, control, power, or glamour. It is not that at all. Leadership is about ability to lead and deliver. And if one has to lead and deliver, if that is the primary characteristic of leadership, then a leader can succeed only if the followers who follow him into action predominantly have full trust, belief, and confidence in him. All right? Now, that is very important, very simple sounding words: trust, belief, and confidence. But how do leaders go around creating this trust, belief, and confidence if the only premature exposure they give to their people is only about their knowledge and their understanding that they are sitting in a position of power, therefore others are supposed to follow them, and therefore inbuilt in his behavior is a mechanism that you should trust me, believe in me, and have confidence in me, because I'm formally sitting in a position of power, and therefore you have no other alternative but to trust me. But if that is the situation, by the inherent nature of confidence, trust, and belief, power can be not the source on which these beliefs can emerge from. All right? So it is not about positioning as a leader. It is not about control of the game. It is not about power. It is about delivering to the common purpose collectively as a system. And therefore, one's observation over a period of time, and this is not necessarily only from corporate subsystems, you go into any of the subsystems, you find most of the other elements falling in place, but the missing place, the missing piece in the whole game generally is leadership effectiveness. All right. So in a way, when we are talking about esoteric leadership, we are going to rely a huge amount of time on effective leadership, and we are going to break open the shell of what is esoteric leadership and find out what lies within that and what collectively makes up for esoteric leadership. All right, and then we will talk about a few more things at a given point of time. Okay, Now we are living in this integrated world, which has given us the concept of the butterfly effect. And I'm sure all of you know what is the butterfly effect, where in principle it says that if a butterfly flies way off, say for example, in the Amazon forests, it has a unique ability by its cascading relationship to trigger a typhoon thousands of miles away in a totally different area. Now, look about it. The integrated system is connected in such a way that the fluttering of a butterfly can cause a typhoon thousands of miles away into a totally different geography. Now, whilst I believe and I like the idea that one has to keep things very simple, and therefore, everything that we try to do, we put it into simple paradigms so that people can understand. But in our desire to make things simple, we should not forget that there is a complex behind the scene things which are happening. And therefore, while simplicity will help us to understand the first levels of things, at some point of time, we will have to learn to break through these rounds of simplicity to understand that what is the real complex mechanism that is working behind to make the simple things look so simple and also give us results. All right. So this is the overarching scheme of things that we are going to talk about. As I explained to you, what is esoteric leadership and how the system of whole system integrated plasticity works. Because when we are working as leaders in organizations, we need to understand this, because half the time, most people and most leaders are unhappy and failing in what they set out themselves to do because they don't understand how they can make themselves effective, because they also do not understand that how this whole system integrated plasticity works for. And I'm going to make a simple attempt to explain that to you. All right. So that's the whole idea.
Okay, sure.
Now, organizations' fulfillment of two goals. Organizations have two goals generally. One is a very express and obvious goal. And therefore, to support that obvious purpose, there is a not expressed subsequent purpose, which is also written into the activity of the organization. So organization's fulfillment of its conscious and express purpose of creating value is one purpose, but to be able to do that, there is an unconscious purpose, and that unconscious purpose is to create a happy and enabling environment in which the value is created. So there are two purposes. Number one, let us create value or fulfill the purpose, which is the reason why the organization is created. And two is an unwritten understanding that to be able to do that, let us create an enabling environment which positively supports the value creation journey. And whilst doing that, creates a certain element of a happy enabling environment and collectively brings happiness to all the people who are working in the system. So there are two supporting, one conscious and one unconscious goal with which organizations are working. Now, to be able to fulfill these two goals that we are talking about, the conscious goal and the unconscious goal, there are four things required in an organization. Number one, total clarity of direction, strategy, and purpose. All right. So you need to have clarity, because unless you get a very clear idea of what the directions and what the strategy is, you will not be able to achieve it. All right. So value will not be created if you don't have that clarity. So number one is clarity of that. Number two is an integrated capacity. All right. So every organization needs to be having, a lot of things inside, investments, and I will come to it when I talk about it. And you do that integrated capacity is what the business model is based on. And on the basis of that integrated capacity and the business model adopted, the value is created. All right. So these are the first two. Now, the second two are very, very important for us, more so because whilst we continue to be business leaders and therefore we are mandated to also look at the other larger goals. But as human resource professionals, there are two subsequent outcomes that we need to focus upon. Number three, therefore, is efficient execution. And number four is effective leadership. So leadership and management, and often than not, most people are confused between what is management and what is leadership. And I will spend 2 minutes of time on that. two important things after direction is cleared and the capacity is built is number one, efficiency, number two, effectiveness. So here I'm trying to make a certain leadership differentiation between efficiency on the one hand and effectiveness on the other hand. And I will try and explain that to you. If you look at the management literature, and most of the faculty members in many institutes also, I have seen and heard them a lot, and in the last year have got sufficiently exposed to a lot of literature, they make a real hash when it comes to differentiating between a manager and a leader. As if to say that manager is everything that is wrong and leadership is everything that is right. Manager is everything which is not interesting. Leadership is everything that is bright and interesting. Management is everything that is mundane. Leadership is everything that is very enchanting. And that kind of a wrong bipolar classification of what is manager and what is a leader is unfortunately made. And how wrong can that be? Totally. Because look at any job that is to be done in this world. Every job in the world will have both elements, a certain element of management activities to be done, because no job will be totally devoid of its mundane supervisory roles that have to be performed. And it will also have a quotient on what a leadership element of that job is. And we will differentiate in a while for you to understand what is the managerial job, what is the leadership job. Therefore, what is it that a manager should do and what is it that the leader in you should do to be able to effectively create that collective fulfillment of two purposes. One, create value, and number two, create a happy environment in which the positive value is created. That is one of the most important things that I'm going to be talking about, all right? So first, I'm going to invest around 3 to 5 minutes of trying to explain what is efficiency, all right? Because we said, number one, you should have clarity of your goals, strategy, and mission and all of that. Number two is we need to have a capability within. If you don't have capability, how do you really go around achieving it? So now the third element, as we were talking, and which is what I will invest my time, is about efficiency. Now, every organization, to be able to create the result of value, will invest 5 things. Number one, systems. Number two, technology. Number 3, resources. Number 4, activities and programs. And number 5, processes. All right. So these are the straps: systems, technology, resources, activities, and processes. So a company involves all of that. And the job of a manager, an effective manager, is to ensure that these 5 investments that a company makes is utilized in such an efficient manner without any kind of a leakage, that there is a top and optimal outcome which comes out from the investment of these 5 things, which are systems, technology, resources, activities, and processes. Total efficient output without wasting or having any leakages in the system is called efficient, effective, efficient management. So if a car gives you 50 kilometers a liter, and if you put in 50 liters of fuel, ideally that car should be able to give you, without any leakages, 2,500 kilometers of a nice effective drive. That is what is efficiency about, creating that final output, which is 2,500 kilometers. All right. Now, this has a limitation, because in efficiency, you cannot go beyond what your investments and capacities are all about. All right. So at 2,500, if you achieve, you are an efficient manager. You've utilized all of these investments to give the output, which is optimum. Now you come to the second concept of what therefore is effectiveness. Effectiveness is about utilizing the mystic and magic of leadership to create an output from the system which is much higher, without any further investments, much higher than what efficiency has created for you. So efficiency has created up to the physical output, which is the end of it. Effectiveness is that element of using the mystic and magic of leadership such that that system is able to create results and give you outputs which are much higher than what efficiency could have created with the investment of systems, technology, resources, activities, and processes. That is what effectiveness is all about. All right. So it is a quantum leadership contribution. Efficiency is an outcome of science, rationality, and logic as a contribution from Western sciences and measured sciences, versus effectiveness is a contribution from spirituality, emotionality, integrity, and a common energy management, which are concepts from the Oriental world, which is combined along with the science and the quantitative methods of the Western world. So when the integration of the Western and the Eastern or the Oriental worlds come together, that is when you get a very, very effective thing. Now, this question, I am sure you must have heard that over a period of time with computers coming and artificial intelligence coming in, and particularly in the last 1 year, as we have seen work from home, these kinds of questions would have effectively come up to everyone's mind. And that question is HR going to be out of job because everything is going to be mechanized, systems are going to take over? And they ask me these questions also as to what really is, are we going to be out of job? Now, what my response to you is, and I'm going to give you a thought as a thought starter and let you think about it. Everything that can be mathematized, everything that can be science, everything that can be put into a kind of an algorithm, that is surely going to be going away. So therefore, efficiency, which is based on science of measurements and algorithms, will over a period of time certainly go away. So if you are involved in jobs which are predominantly mundane, repetitive, much more science-based, because they can be analyzed, their data can be analyzed with artificial intelligence and big data analysis far more effectively than the human mind without any errors. So those kinds of jobs are certainly going to go away. But what is going to remain are the esoteric elements of leadership, which talk about effectiveness, because that is an art, and that art is going to stay. That art cannot be algorithmized. You cannot give machine that art of effectiveness. And therefore, those of you who are really ever worried about whether the HR job will remain or not, if you are really an artist of an HR manager, you don't need to be worried. But if you are involved and engaged in only the mundane elements of HR, payroll processing, HR administration, performance management systems, all of that is going to be mechanized. What will not be mechanized are the effectiveness elements of leadership, which are esoteric. So magic, someone has rightly defined, magic is just science that we do not understand as of now. As yet, we have not understood it, and therefore its happening is being defined as magic. Esoteric leadership that I'm talking about is using charisma, presence, magnetism, mystic, and magic of leadership. All right, those elements which are not process driven. So esoteric leadership, and I'm repeating for purposes of understanding, is about using charisma, presence, your sheer presence, your magnetism of attraction, the mystic, and the magic of leadership. What is important is in our self-belief, because we have started believing over a period of time that all that is science can be easily learned, but all that is not science cannot be learned. And therefore, we have over a period of time grown ourselves into believing that we will be able to understand the syllabus-based science of management, but we will not be able to understand the critical elements of leadership, which gives that magical touch where, a person talking to another person is good enough for the other person to be motivated for 5 years or more, as compared to using systems and processes which have its own limited use. Therefore, deficit in our understanding that what is not science cannot be easily learned is the cause of the entire problem that we are facing today. Okay. But if one therefore succeeds in effectively breaking through this code of magic, then matchless outcomes. People can make other people walk through firewalls. There were Maratha leaders who could make their followers and soldiers jump out of walls as they were fighting, not because that they were leaders, but because their belief was so much that people could effectively believe in what they are saying and therefore achieve what they wanted to achieve. All right, so that is what it is. So what is formula based? That can be learned by logic and science. But for magic to be heard and learned, you have to break the code. All right, now the purpose, what is the purpose of esoteric leadership? The purpose of esoteric leadership is to use leadership advantage to inspire, motivate, engage, and connect with people. Now, how do you utilize this? We all understand that a leader is supposed to do that, but to be able to do that, what is it that the leader should do is something that I'm going to be talking about. All right. So the advantage of being able to do that and create happiness and flourish around in the organization. Now, to be able to do that, what is it that you will see when you break open the shell of leadership? All right. When you break open the cell of esoteric leadership, there are 7 things you will see inside. And those 7 things are: number 1, authenticity; number 2, courage; number 3, inspiration; number 4, empathy; number 5, mindfulness; number 6, temperance; and number 7, prudence. All right. Now, if you break open the shell of esoteric leadership, what will you find inside? These are the 7 things you will find inside. Therefore, if you want to develop in you that magical ability to be able to drive people to contribute more than what the efficient systems can do, then these are the 7 areas which you need to understand and do to be able to successfully be an esoteric leader in a larger system. All right. And then I will explain to you that when you look at both the human systems and the people systems, how the whole system integrated plasticity helps it to naturally be flexible and be able to succeed. Right. Now, when you are talking about authenticity, and we say that esoteric leadership, when will people or when will the followers start having trust in a leader? People will start having trust in a leader when they feel that the leader is authentic, positive, and spiritual. All right. There has to be a certain element of genuineness in the assessment of the follower towards the leader. Only then they will mindlessly follow him. Otherwise, they will put all screens and guards on before they start accepting that kind of a leader. There is a certain element of spirituality, which means application of the spiritual values, meaning of work. A leader who is able to influence his people to see those elements will then be able to get that kind of a blind followership, as a result of which that leader will be able to draw effective results beyond efficiency from them. Certain element of authenticity. But what is most important on the working track of the organization, if you were to remove all these principles, the first important thing that you will see an esoteric leader do is usher in on the breathing tracks of the organizational activities a certain sense of positiveness. He is positive about everything that happens, good and bad, in the organization with the people on the breathing tracks of the organization. Therefore, a leader continuously, in a way, is looking at to ensure that people don't become negative. And if there is negativity happening around them, how does he handhold them to make them positive and convert them into giving effective results? All right. So this is the first thing, the entire principle of authenticity, positivity, and spiritual values that the leader is being believed in by the followers for them to blindly trust him and give him that feeling of effectiveness, which produces results much higher than what efficiency can create. The second is a leader, we always have said it in bits and pieces, a certain element of fortitude, a certain element of courage a certain element of resilience and vitality. And this really got expressed out in the last 1 year. There were people who were sitting in positions of leadership and power and couldn't do anything because they didn't know what to do. They were unable to support their people in these kinds of movements, and people who were equally blinded were actually looking forward to their leaders to guide them through, but the leadership was actually found grossly missing in a lot many places. Therefore, the sheer courage, the sheer fortitude, the sheer resilience, and the sheer vitality, because at moments of adversity and moments of bad times, a certain vitality which was prevailing previous to that tends to fall down. People lose their energy, they lose their positiveness, they don't know what to do, they lose their energies, there is certain depression, there is certain moments of anxiety. Now this vitality has to be revitalized by leader, and when they see that in their moments of weakness, when the leader is able to search their vitality, they start believing in him, and when they start believing in him, they trust him, and that is when a leader becomes effective. So to become an effective esoteric leader, the second most important quality you need to develop is the quality of fortitude, resilience, and vitality. Nicholas Taleb, the great thinker, and all of you are aware of it, the author who wrote Black Swan Effect, has actually said that the leadership that you require in moments like this in esoteric leadership is called anti-fragile leadership. Anti-fragile leadership. And those who have not read his book on anti-fragile leadership, I would encourage you to read it. Anti-fragile leadership is about leadership which makes the people gain from chaos. Whenever there is chaos, people tend to lose to chaos. Anti-fragile leaders make the systems and people believe in themselves so much that they actually achieve much higher than what their commitment was prior to moments of adversity. That is called esoteric leadership. Once you create that anti-fragile leadership, that is when the leader comes up in his eyes, and the people are then able to work with him and give results much higher than what efficiency is all about. The third most important quality that you need to reflect to be able to get that kind of blind followership from people to get the multiplier effect of the results is inspiration, influence, and soft touch. When you are sitting in position of power, there is a certain element of inbuilt arrogance that creeps into people because the chair has a certain effect to make a person believe that he is the most powerful person. Now, people don't accept those leaders who are able to operate only on the basis of power, because the rule in esoteric leadership is very simple. An esoteric leader is a person who has total power but succeeds in doing his job with the least use of power. Can you see the paradox, the beauty of it? You have the total power available to yourself to be able to do or not do anything, but your success is measured by the least amount of power that you use. When people see you doing that, that is the time when they start believing in you, where they will not put the filters on, where they will not be quietly and passively resisting you, but wholeheartedly cooperating with you. As a consequence of which, your ability to give the system results much higher than the invested resources of efficiency are, then comes into foreplay, and that is when you become esoteric leader. All right, so importance of inspiration, influence, and soft touch is very important, and that is what makes you successful. The fourth most important quality is empathy, passion, and compassion. You cannot get people to start believing in you like abracadabra. There is no magical powder that our leader has, which he sprinkles on his people, and then suddenly people will start giving him their total faith and confidence and contributions over and above what invested resources are all about. Every human being is born with 7 emotions, which we all know: happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, contempt, shame, guilt. These are 7 emotions everybody is born with, all right, irrespective of which country, which color, caste, creed, sex. Now, these 7 emotions, when they come into confrontation with real life situations, are dynamically reacting. Either it goes positive or it takes a negative, and sometimes you have to help it to hold, because the best and the most beautiful part is all of these have to be held in a positive middle course, which is what we call equanimous balance, which is what we will talk in a little while on that as the sixth or the seventh quality that we are talking about, esoteric leadership. All right. Now, what is important is a leader, an esoteric leader, has got to be absolutely empathetic, which means he should be able to understand that when the systems are reacting and acting with the people, how do they, or what is the reaction they have on their 7 basic emotions? How do these 7 emotions sway and move when he is interacting with situations which are prevailing at his workplace or home or anywhere else? How do they move? And a leader has to start understanding the reaction of the people from these points of view. So when people see that the leader is able to understand their emotions and their behaviors and reactions as consequences of the emotions that they are having, they start having that kind of a mad trust in the leader, that then they are able to do anything for him and start producing and giving energies much higher than what their expected output from efficiency would be all about. They therefore make the leader give results close to what effective results are, much higher. Without investing any other resources, the output will be multiplied so many times more fold. So what is a leader supposed to do in this? In the empathy, passion, and compassion, a leader is constantly supposed to normalize. What do you mean by normalization? Most HR guys, when I talk about normalization, can only think about the normalization curve or the bell curve that they are experienced with. And that is such a 1% of the real concept of normalization. When emotions come into play, there are 2 situations which exist. Either people trivialize or they terribilize. Now, when COVID happened, what did you see? Initially, how was the people's reaction? Some said, oh my God, it is the end of the world, the most terrible thing that has happened. Everyone is going to come to an end. World is going to come to an end. Nostradamus happening. Gods had predicted, do you remember that the world will come to an end? This is the beginning of the end. Terribilization. On the other hand, there is a concept called trivialization. So some people were happy-go-lucky, having fun, going to picnics, going to see shows, mixing around, no social distancing. You people are making too much out of it. It is what? It is nothing. It's like influenza. It will get over within no time. Why are you trying to make too much out of it? That is called trivialization. So generally, emotions sway between trivialization and terribilization. And what an esoteric leader at all points of time is supposed to do is what is called normalization or harmonization, to bring him to the reality in between, not terribilization, but certainly not trivialization, and to take a matured stance. That is when people see him taking that matured normalization stance, and they start believing in him, they start trusting in him. They tell him that, yes, we know that we are capable of getting swayed by emotional realities, but we know that here is a leader who will not let us fail. Here is a leader who will not let us fall. And therefore, when he says, work for me and deliver this, they give their 175% of what their capacities are, because they trust that leader. And that is the role of empathy in that. The next is called calmness, equanimity, and mindfulness. Most leaders fail in that in real time or in adverse times also. Number one, whilst they consider themselves very knowledgeable, and they are knowledgeable, they do not have the calmness, they do not have the equanimity and the balance. And therefore, when the people see that the leader is not very perturbed by even the most adverse eventualities happening in the world, where if they are expecting a certain business order, a very big business order, and if that business order doesn't come to them, he does not get very ruffled. He takes within his stride. He gives his hand and helps us to get over the situation and fight another day. Then they generally believe that that leader is equanimous, is mindful. Now, everybody has been running about these programs called mindfulness without really knowing where mindfulness fits. Mindfulness is the source point of a leader's esoteric leadership style. Because what does mindful tell him? Mindful tells him that that you don't need to be bothered about what is happening in the past or what has happened in the past. Keep the emotional baggages away. A person may have behaved in a certain way or not behaved in a certain way. The current situation, you need to manage him in the here and now moment and not be mindful of what is the past. And therefore, you be mindfully managing him. And when they see that the past is not held against a person, the leader is really seeing the situation in the here and now and guiding him and hand-holding him, not on the basis of some past mistakes, but on the basis of what the current situation is. That is when they give that total belief, that total trust, that total confidence in that leader. And that is when that leader becomes effective. And everyone wants to become an effective leader. But unless and until a leader over a sustained period of time, by his various behaviors that we are talking about, creates that certain aura about himself, his style, and his behaviors in the minds of his followers, they will not be able to really give up their basic defenses. They will not throw away their veils. They will not throw away their artificial pretensions that they give, but belief that they hold back. They will continue to do that, and therefore the leader won't be able to become effective. So you cannot become an effective leader or an esoteric leader overnight. You have to build through virtues of displaying all of these qualities of an esoteric leader. Only then the people throw away the veils that they are holding behind them. So calmness, mindfulness, and equanimity are one of the most important things. The next most important things, the sixth, is called temperance, reasonableness, and justice. If a leader is not just, if he is not temperate, if he is only about controlling himself, he is only about controlling the thoughts of other people, then he is not reasonable. Or if a mistake has happened and he is not able to understand reasonably why that mistake happened. So the sheer element that in the minds of the followers, they believe that a leader is generally reasonable, and therefore when he's saying something or when he's telling you to do something, he has no other reason but the fulfillment of a certain vibrant leadership which is required in a given situation. They are willing to throw away their veils. They are willing to step out of their defense mechanisms and come out and contribute through total belief in the leader. And that is what makes the leader effective and give to the system X factors much higher than what the invested resources in terms of systems, technology, resources, activities, and processes of the organization are all about. All right. Moderation of this behavior, balanced behavior, justice, fairness, natural justice. Those are, for example, if a leader does not really take care of a complaint of a whistleblower on sexual harassment of a lady by another senior leader, now then that it may not be against you, it may be against that other person who has complained, but everyone else does end up creating a certain belief about you that you are a person who covers up for the management, who does not reasonably stand for all the people. There is no temperance, there is no reasonableness, there is no justice. Therefore, when it comes to them putting their total efforts, their total initiative, their total trust in you, there will be some holdback. They will use their filters, they will use their defense mechanisms and not step out to give that total 170% to you, which will give you the quantum leadership advantage which is required. And the last of the esoteric leadership quality, which will make you be seen as an esoteric leader, is called rationality, prudence, which is very, very important. All right. Prudence is good judgment. How do you use resources in the right way? They, your judgment that you have taken, your rationality in decision making, which is sensible on the basis of proper logic, on the basis of proper knowledge. You explain why you have decided to put resources where, not that just because you are sitting in a position of power, you are deciding on resource allocation. So whilst all of these you see in an organization happening in isolation, it is when you put all of these elements together and you realize that a leader, unless he shows these 7 elements of behaviors, he will not be able to win over that trust of his people, as a consequence of which if the leader is not seen as an esoteric leader, people will only do what is expected of them to do in normal times. They will utilize their resources. They will not waste their resources. Maybe they will ensure that they are giving the results which are expected out of them without any leakages, but they will not do anything to go beyond. They will not risk their lives, they will not risk their time, they will not put their additional hours, they will not put that discretionary energy which they can put. Now, real connections and real engagement is about people wholeheartedly putting their discretionary energy, which only they can decide, behind the cause of the leader. Now, this discretionary energy that people put into an organization, which creates effectiveness, comes from the belief of the followers about the leader. Only when the leader is seen as someone who's trustworthy, someone on whom the belief can be relied, it is only then that people put in and invest their discretionary effort to do much beyond what they are expected to do. Now, let me come to the last concept, and then we will take question answers to understand. The main concept that we wanted to talk about is what is whole system integrated plasticity. And it sounds like some rocket science, but it is not rocket science. So there are two systems working in an organization. Number one is the business system, and the other is the people system. All right, so that's really no great shakes. Everyone understands that there are business systems which are working, which is based on the value chain, which is based on from how raw material, order to remittance cycle, quick market intelligence, performance management system, new product introduction, supply chain management. So like all human beings have got 8 or 9 systems existing, organizations have got these 11 systems existing. Now, these 11 systems are all integrated into what we call a business model. So every organization has a business model in which this value chain integrated systems are operating. Now, when situations change, the whole business system is integrated in such a way that they keep automatically aligning with each other, and the supply chain adjusts itself, the cash flows keep changing, the people are inside out, they show the relevant talent. So the integrated business system is predominantly adjusting itself depending on the challenges it is facing. That's one. Number two, alongside with the business system are the human systems, which have got to be aligned to the business system. If the human systems and the business systems are not working together, this disalignment will actually crash the organization. Most organizations which have got very good business models are not able to deliver results because predominantly their people systems are doing a dance totally different than the symphony that the business system is drawing. All right. So they have to be. Now, do you see what happens when an adversity is happening? When an adversity happens in the business system, people systems come and plastically or flexibly come and adjust themselves to ensure that the system is prevailing. At the same time, say, for example, if something goes wrong with a senior leader's wife at home, or if she is not well or he is not well, then he is able to immediately have a negative impact in the organization because his thoughts are everywhere else. So automatically the larger business system adjusts itself to be able to cope with this loss in the human system. Or if a critical leader goes away, tell me one thing, have you ever seen an organization shutting down when the most important leader in the organization leaves, dies, or is unable to, due to sickness or any other reasons, perform? Whilst it may initially look like a big shock, the larger system automatically finds a way to be able to cope with that loss, and then subsequently that loss is made good. But therefore, there is a certain element of plasticity. Now, plasticity effectively means an inherent flexibility of alignment between the two systems, that one system adjusts itself to be able to cope with the other system when moments of crisis or moments of adversity strike. And that is the concept of whole system plasticity. Therefore, when we are talking about esoteric leadership is able to take charge of the situation when
Uh, you are free, Dr. Adil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
start.
The image is frozen. The image is frozen.
I think network issue.
Network problem, yes, it looks like.
He'll connect it. He'll get connected.
We'll wait for him to reconnect.
But he should be aware of this.
आप जरा जगदीश में आप फोन करके बता देना जरा.
Am I audible, please?
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I don't know how something happened and automatically I went
The
into.
image was frozen for some time. Yeah.
All right. So, and this is what I thought I will share with you. It's a new concept that we are talking about. Everyone is talking about it. And rightly, you know, it is about the belief in the magic of leadership, about the mysticism of leadership. And therefore they say, ek umr wo bhi thi, jab logo ka jadoo mein bhi yakin tha. अब ये उम्र आई हुई है जहां लोगों को हकीकत पर भी भरोसा नहीं होता. And this is where we are. How do we create
नहीं होता है.
right? So this is what the thought was, willing to share with you. Esoteric leadership is about using the leadership advantage, the myth of leadership, the magic of leadership effectively to be able to create that multiplier effect. Now, everybody understands that, but no one understands how do you go around creating it? What is it that goes into creating that magic? How do effective leaders become effective? And how is effectiveness different from efficiency? That is the concept I wanted to talk with you guys. I wonder if it is meaningful. I hope I have been able to do justice in trying to explain it.
Absolutely. Inshallah.
Absolutely. I think from the old world example of industry, I can quickly think of Suman Mulgaonkar. Which
Yes.
is the old world example.
Yes. Look at Ratan
Absolutely,
Tata, look
yeah.
at Narayan
Right.
Murthy, look at Wipro, look at Shiv Nadar. Great leaders who are showing and using their effective leadership skills where people are able to do anything for them without putting their guards on.
Absolutely. Very nice. Very true.
So if there are any questions, Jagdish Saab, willing to take them.
Anybody having question, please unmute and ask the question.
Namaste, I'm Girish Dandige.
Girish, namaste.
Excellent session, sir.
Thank you, sir.
They say common sense is most uncommon, and whatever you talk to is basically all commonsensical things, but very, very important traits of the leadership, esoteric leadership. If you could just give some real life examples of both the ends, as you said, trivialization and terribilization. One example of failure, one example of success. Leadership. You
All
named
right.
about
So-
few leaders. We also know we have just as we are doing today. We celebrate. The nation is celebrating billion doses of a billion people being vaccinated and all. I think that also is an excellent example of leadership. Of course, it's not
Rightly
just
said.
one person, but it's a teamwork, the entire stakeholders. But if you could quote out of your experience one bad example
No,
and one very good example.
Girish, for fear of politicization, I would not mention him, but otherwise, I really see him as a very, very esoteric leader. There is a certain magical way that he has been able to achieve and solve so many of our problems. Now, of course, there can be a political debate on it, and I don't want to indulge in politics. Right. So the idea is not to get into the politics of it, but look at it. There were several questions which remained on our hands unresolved. We had the larger Ayodhya question, we had the Kashmir question, we were struck with an adversity. And all of this, which people, and of course, there will be in a democratic system, there will be some opposition, there will be some, oh, your style is this, some corruption, something. I'm not touching any of that. But I'm saying is that unless there was an effective leader who was really cutting edge, It
True.
would not have been possible for us to see through a large nation like ours, with certainly our health systems not really the best in class, not really all that well defined, to be able to get up and do the kind of things that we have done with not as much of a big disaster as it otherwise could have been. A very
Absolutely.
good example. So what one is saying is, look at what Ratan Tata has said. Look at
Yeah.
it this way. All right, let me put it this way. How does the trust factor come? When this entire Air India news came in, all right, and each one of us is now a WhatsApp champion, and we are all graduates of WhatsApp universities. Have you ever come across one WhatsApp which says Air India should not have been given away to the Tatas? At least I have in my analysis not done that.
No.
I have been only getting messages which says, what a brilliant move, so late,
Yeah,
ideally
yeah.
it should have been done ages ago. Now, for a minute, and I'm not going to name any other company, but if this decision would have been taken to give Air India to any other entrepreneurial group, at
Yeah.
least half a dozen would have jumped up to say, this is nothing, this is only politicization, you
True,
have
true,
only
true.
given it away to your crony capital partners, all of that. So what is it? What is it that makes the difference? It is a certain element of esoteric belief that you have generated, not tomorrow morning, but by virtue of having done work along with people for so many years, that people now blindly trust you and believe that you will deliver what others will not be able to deliver.
Can we
And
call it
therefore they back you
leadership
up.
brand or brand leadership?
Well, brand is a brand. Even the bad is a brand. Good is a brand. Brand is a brand. But esoteric is something that you will make someone else jump. He does not care for his life. He jumps because he believes he's committed to what you are telling him.
I think the
I
other,
think in Maratha history, and I forget the name, there was one of those guys who literally told one of the generals that you go ahead, Shivaji, and Maharaj, you go ahead, and I will fight with the enemy single-handedly to be able to
Baji
defeat
Prabhu.
him.
Bajirao.
Bajirao,
Prabhu.
yes,
Bajirao,
yeah.
Bajirao.
Baji
Yeah,
Prabhu.
Yeah. So now what is that? How do you really, infuse
Yeah.
that sense of belief?
example.
Yeah.
Esoteric.
It's esoteric leadership that you have given him so much of trust that he says, I don't care for my life. I'm going to protect you because you have a larger purpose to deliver. I will go
Absolutely.
beyond what is my normal human fears. I will thrive over that.
Yeah.
So that's an example.
Thank you.
Dr.
very
Adil,
much.
The fact,
there's
the
one
fact
more
that-
example. I'm sorry.
yeah, and the fact that you were not able to get that name shows how history has been implanted in India.
Yeah, that's a fact, unfortunately. No,
Ah.
it is much more about my memory rather than history.
Even otherwise, that is how it is. Anyway, thanks, sir.
Dr. Adil, one more example, I think, which is staring at us in the face is that, when you spoke about the butterfly effect, I mean, China is not exactly a butterfly, but the fact is that when it flutters, you have an impact somewhere else. And, the kind of situation that we are currently facing, just today, the army chief has come out with a statement saying that, it has been envisaged that India will now become a world leader in the usage of AI. Now, that is a very far-reaching statement. The fact that the country wants to become a world leader in AI is a statement taking into account exactly all that is happening in 360 degrees, in this highly volatile environment, and India trying to make the best out of it with an India initiative. In terms of esoteric leadership, I thought I would just mention this point across.
So, Murthy ji, when it comes to my session, I told you about butterfly effect. When it comes to China, it is called dragonfly effect.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good.
Doctor, one thing, I got one question. Sometimes you hear big leaders talking about on different platforms. Sometimes they say my employees are they are the people who are the best, and they are the people who deliver. And sometimes they say it's the for customers. We are for scientist-minded people. They say, why are our customers not always important? I mean, employees are certainly important. When you say customers are important, and that's why the business is for, But employees, nobody says that employees are not important, but only saying employees are more important than customers actually gives a wrong sort of notion.
So Kelkar Saab, it is like this, that the system will start believing that customer is the most important only if the employees start believing that customer is the most important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if leader wants to keep believing customer is important, he can keep believing, but you can't single-handedly do anything. You want the whole system to believe. So the first point of any transformation is from within the system. So you have to work with employees first to be able to convert their minds so that they start talking about the most important thing, that is your customer. So therefore, if customer is the most important, that is good statement for sloganeering, but you have to work with your people so that they start treating customer as most important. That is the entire message.
Oh, yeah, but that is understood, right? I mean, yeah, the employees are only people who can deliver that customer satisfaction, right?
So then how can customers be first? You will have to have your people with you.
I mean, yeah, that's how that was one of the clarification I just wanted to.
Sure. But what's the concept? I don't think it is such a rocket science of a concept, but unfortunately, people don't tend to, or leaders don't tend to believe, because everyone wants to become a great leader. But how do you end up becoming a great leader? What is the recipe book? What are the ingredients? How do you cook it? Because certain things have to be, the ingredients have to be put inside the stove and in the cooker for several hours. Only then the dish is ready. So when situations come, suddenly those leaders won't emerge. Over a period of time, they have to be cooked on the stove so that the right dish is being prepared at the time when you want to eat. So what are the ingredients and how long should you put? When should you begin? So the new leaders of future, if you want to develop esoteric leaders, when should you start working? When should you put them on the stove? That is very important.
But I feel little bit the today's business excellence models, doctor, do consider I would say not 100%, because I think you have made the esoteric leadership definitions so complete and so relevant, but on a day-to-day basis, on a year-to-year basis, I think even business excellence models do consider both sides. All this, both efficiency and effectiveness is important.
Yes, Mr. Kelkar, they do. But can you look at this?
Yeah.
Today, the world is running on business valuations. Who does the valuation? All the valuation companies do valuation of companies. Do you know something? That there is zero consideration for people in the entire valuation of an organization. So when valuation companies are valuing companies, there is zero assessment of people. When on the other end, you keep saying that people are your prime source of value creation. So how come there is zero factor of evaluation? You can go to any of the valuation companies and tell them, show me your model. And what is the value you put on human systems? There is zero valuation of it.
Surprising.
Very true.
Thank you.
Great paradox.
Paradox.
It is a paradox.
Also look at it this way. If you take an entire annual report of any company, on the first page, there is the chairman who says, people are my resources, standard statement, without people, our people have done this, our people, first page. And on the second page, compensation paid to the people is shown as an expense. It is not even in a profit and loss account. It is a loss because it brings down your profit.
Yeah.
So if that is a value creating investment, how are you seeing it as a loss?
Correct.
So we are running organizations where from a very limited financial perspective, and we refuse to go beyond that to see the human contributions to the entire value creation.
In fact, as you read, I think you gave a very right, I would say, example of annual report of a company in which the chairman's or the president's photograph will be there, which will be only seen by his wife, perhaps, or a mother. Or mother.
Not even that.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't believe.
Yes. But that was little later replaced by your customers. And I think nowadays it is the employees serving the customers.
Correct.
To a fair extent, I would also say that if I had to quote an example from Indian industry, from a services point of view, I think the Life Insurance Corporation has done a good job. If you look
Yes,
at it from an overview and the points that, the key elements that you have mentioned, I think they've done a fair job. You can't be reaching 60% plus of market share otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is fairly true.
I think,
Okay.
Murthy, I think that's more to do also with what's your goal. Ultimately, if your goal is to only make money, there'll be one company. If your goal is to make safety or assure people of their life, I think that's another way of looking at a business model.
Absolutely. But, if you look at those two elements which he has just mentioned about, which is the business and the human side of it, I was just looking at the elasticity, the longevity, and the impact of the fact that over 60 plus years, LIC has, maintained its connect with its employees, which is such a large base. And these people are all around, the average age of tenure of these people is around 40, 45 years plus with the organization, including all the new people who are. If you look at all the insurance players who are on the private side versus the Life Insurance Corporation, which has got around 5% of holding from the central government. But if you look at it, even all the youngsters are all migrated to Life Insurance Corporation. So the connect between the business and the human side, I think there is fairly strong, I would put it that way.
The whole message is simple, that leaders have a magical aspect. There are some who have that magical touch. How do we start having most of our leaders have that magical touch with their people so that they can give results more than what the investments made in that company?
Yes. But Dr. Adil, one huge failure, which, as an example, I would say is, and a very unfortunate example, is that, we had probably one of the best leaders in the world, which is Nelson Mandela. But in spite of the leader that he was, and I would have hoped that South Africa would have followed his philosophy. South Africa has not done that post Mandela. If you see that, I think we have missed out very badly. As a country, I think they've missed the boat there.
Possible, yeah. So, any more questions?
Any more?
No, excellent session.
Okay.
Big
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Girish. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay, I will request Shakespeare Datta to give vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jagdish sir. Hope I am audible.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. You are.
Yeah, very beautiful evening, and it's my privilege on behalf of TMF. I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks for devoting your precious time for our members on this very interesting, knowledge-packed session on isothermic leadership. So you have started with a very simple definition that I've ever heard about leadership is to lead and deliver. The followers can follow and deliver with trust, belief, and confidence.
Yeah.
Moving forward, they touch upon the unconscious aspect of creating happy and enabling environment, which helps in creating the value creating journey. You have also demystified the concepts of leadership and management while having the value and the positive environment with efficiency and effectiveness. The session was not only confined to the HR arena, but it was in totality in 360 degree. As you have rightly mentioned about anything that can be analyzed or has an algorithm, such jobs will go away. So it is true for all the arenas of all the aspects of any business.
Yeah.
So to sustain, we need to learn the art of effectiveness, that is the esoteric leadership. Also, you stressed upon the 7 things or 7 points and went into very details about the authenticity, courage, inspiration, empathy, mindfulness, temperance, and prudence. And it was a cherry on the cake when you mentioned about the anti-fragile leadership by Nicholas and the Lexan effect. And it was really, it's a food for thought about the normalization of terribilization and trivialness. So thanks a million once again for this fantastic session. We look forward for engaging with you, sir, with Thane Management Forum and with our future programs. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jagdish, sir.
Pleasure,
Okay.
mine. Thank you.
Dr. Adil, thanks a lot for giving us the time and giving us such an interesting and knowledgeable session. And we look forward
Thank you,
to
sir.
some more sessions from you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anytime,
Thank you.
anytime
Thank you.
welcome. Let-
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
So,
Thank you so much.
thanks for everybody for attending
Let's
this
have his contact
webinar.
number.
Great having
And
you.
Thank
now
you.
we say,
Thank
I will close the meeting now. We'll end
Thank
the
you.
meeting.
And thanks
Okay.
everybody. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.